He's the president of the United States, and I wish him nothing but the best. But we lost. And I just want to say this to the Democrats, which I'm an independent who voted Democratic. Do me this favor. Shut the up. When you win, you get to say what you want to. When you lose, you need to shut the hell up.
Charles Barkley, breaking it down. I've said on this program, there's so many on the left. They had so much momentum. They're still saying the same stuff post-election that they were saying before the election. And Sir Charles saying, y'all are stupid. And from the lips of Chuck, shut the up, is what he's saying. If you want to know why you lost because of inflation. You lost because of illegal immigration and the crime that has been tied to it. You lost to the perception that illegal immigrants were being treated better than tax-paying American citizens. You lost because you were in favor of men playing women's sports. You lost because of identity politics, where identity is more important than anything, and people are sick of hearing it. You lost because a lot of us care about free speech, and we want to have a public forum in this country where those from all different backgrounds and those of all different beliefs have a place where they can gather and discuss ideas, because some of us still believe that that discourse is important. You lost because you have too many Hamas sympathizers on your side, and too many people on your side were anti-Israel. You lost because you're weak on crime. You had a candidate that was afraid to even say anything about Prop 36 in California because she was afraid that some of her voters would be offended if they thought that she was actually, as a former prosecutor, voting to crack down on criminals. You lost, as I was saying before the break, in referencing Megan Rapinoe, you lost because you complain and you complain and you complain and you complain and you whine and you whine and you whine and you didn't offer any solutions. Nobody wants to listen to the people that are bitching and moaning all the time, telling you how bad the other person is. The other person's Hitler. Well, what do you have to offer? And Kamala Harris says, I wouldn't have changed anything from the last 3.5 years. That's why you lost. That's what Charles Barkley is trying to tell you. And if you're smart, you'll stop talking for a while and you'll get together and you will try to reflect in a serious and meaningful way about what the vote of last Tuesday should have told you. Take a look, figure it out, remedy it, and then get back to us. Now, with that said, I want to go to a strong, intelligent woman. I don't know if she's been seen with Donald Trump lately or not, but let me bring in now Amber Harding, OutKick's outstanding writer and friend of this program. And Amber, I know you've got a piece up right now about Charles Barkley and this very issue, but I want to start by being the first person here. I'm going to do real journalism on this program, Amber. The View, in the wake of this election, even though they keep saying all the same things on the program that they were saying before it, the story has just broke that they are looking for a strong conservative voice for The View. So I want to be the first person to ask you, Amber, if offered, would you serve in that capacity?
Absolutely. I volunteer as tribute. I mean, I know I'm a Fox employee, but if they'd let me do a little dual citizenship and spend an hour a day just schooling these women at the View desk, I would be more than happy. And I could come at a discount because I'm not going to charge them $8 million a year like Whoopi Goldberg does, even though she says she's part of the working class because she's out here working and she doesn't have all the money in the world. But I would do it for half. I would do it for $4 million, Ricky. And I think that's a deal. A steal, honestly.
It's a bargain. Ratings would go up. You would become America's most popular person. Half the country would be tuning in just to watch you school Sonny Hostin and that crew. So I don't think there's any downside. You'd probably make up the other 4 million in endorsements, Amber. You'd be like Caitlin Clark. You'd be making your money from endorsements. So, Amber, what do you make of this? I mean, I know that Charles usually doesn't have a filter, so it's not exactly a new thing to hear Chuck shoot it straight, but I don't know, man. It seems like he was pretty close to the target there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, Trump's absolute blowout win should have been a pretty clear sign to the Democrats that people want change, that what they're doing is not working. But instead of doing this self-reflection and acknowledging, like, okay, here's what we did wrong, here's what we could do better, and here's what the American people want. They talk and talk and talk, but they don't do any listening, which is really their job, is listening to what their constituents want. And I think their constituents made a pretty clear message here. But instead of that self-reflection, it's, well, everyone's just sexist and racist, and that's why Kamala didn't get elected. So essentially, most of, at least what I've seen from the left-leaning media, is that they really learned nothing. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Charles Barkley, even though I'm sure he and I differ greatly on a lot of our political views, is that he's not tribal. He's not afraid to call out his side for when they screw up, really. I mean, he has been critical of the Democrats in the past, saying that he doesn't like the way that they basically use Black people, is what he said. They only care about Black people every 4 years, and then just try to pander to them for the vote. We saw them do that in this election cycle. We saw Barack Obama lecturing Black men specifically about why it's their duty to vote for Kamala. And it's just all that identity politics stuff, instead of actually addressing the issues that we care about. So, I mean, I think Chuck was spot on right there. I mean, he was pretty harsh. I mean, he said, you lost because you're stupid. And, he might be onto something there.
Well, I think they should listen to him, because he's the sort of moderate, independent-minded guy who has obviously leaned Democrat. He's the sort of person that they could lose more of, because obviously this election should have spoken loud and clear to the left. As you're saying, Amber, the public spoke on this, and there are more people that could leave the Democratic Party if they don't clean it up. And I think that Barkley is speaking on behalf of a lot of other folks who want to see the Democrats come back towards the middle and, maybe take some corrective measures based on the feedback that they've gotten from the public. Because I think that the public told the Democrats, you're too extreme. You have gone too far left in numerous respects, and they want to see some correction take place. So maybe they will listen to Chuck. Amber, one story that I'm interested in very much continues to be the Algerian boxer, Imane Khelif, who won a gold medal in Paris. I know that you covered the story. We covered it on this program. Some pretty big news here, Amber. A French journalist dropping a leak that in June of 2023, Imane Khelif was tested and determined to not have a uterus, but rather to have internal testicles and a micropenis, as well as XY chromosomes, which happens sometimes. Some people are what is referred to medically as intersexed, and that was the allegation that was happening against Imane Khelif. We now have word that in 2023, testing was done that in fact indicates, again to repeat, internal testicles, a micropenis, and XY chromosomes. So, Amber, based on this information, Khelif is threatening legal action for this information being leaked out to the public. What do you make of it? She already has the gold medal. I don't know what happens now. Obviously, the International Olympic Committee, they had no appetite for doing anything about this. Obviously, as we saw, the one young woman who quit about 40 or 45 seconds into the fight simply because she said she'd never been hit like that. in her life. Amber, what do we make of this? We seem to have corroboration now of what a lot of us were speculating.
Yeah, and Khelif was disqualified from the 2023 Women's World Boxing Championships for that reason, because of the failed gender test that showed that this person has XY chromosomes, is a biological male. The IOC knew that. They had that information. They chose not to act on that. In fact, the IOC defended Khelif's participation in the women's events, saying that it really wasn't their place, that they just kind of go with whatever the sports governing body is when it comes to any kind of transgender issues. I do think that we have to have some level of sympathy and nuance here. This is not a transgender situation. This is a person who was born with a sexual development disorder. Khelif did not ask for this. I'm sure that's a very difficult condition to grow up with and to live with. But the reality is, even though it's not fair to Khelif, it's also not fair to the female boxers who are going up against someone who is, by all biological purposes, a male, who has the testosterone levels of a male. And this French report further proved that this is the case. So I think that we do have to have a level of sympathy, but at the same time, we really have to look at this from a safety and a fairness standpoint. I mean, Khelif blew through the Olympics, won the gold easily, didn't even lose a round, if I recall correctly. And the same thing happened with the Taiwanese boxer who has the same condition. And we've seen this in other sports too. One of the most decorated track stars, Caster Semenya, same thing, competed with women, won a ton of gold medals. Came out that had XY chromosomes. There were several other runners in 2016, I believe, who had the same issue. And now those runners aren't allowed to compete because World Athletics stepped in and said, hey, we can't do this anymore. There has to be a certain testosterone level. We have to regulate this. And I know that they've kind of fought back legally as well. Again, it's not fair. It's not fair to anybody involved. And I fully sympathize with Khelif in this condition, but I also think that what we really have to do is protect the women and the women's category.
I couldn't agree with you more, Amber. It's this idea that you're a mean person somehow if you're against it. And it doesn't mean that you're against the human being. The San Jose State University volleyball story, right? I don't think anybody who is against Blair Fleming playing against those young women are against Blair Fleming, the human being. That's a completely separate issue. And so Imane Khelif, the person, that's one thing. We're talking about just safety, fairness, opportunity, what serves the greater good for the greatest number of people. And I think one day we're going to look back on this, Amber, and we're going to wonder why we chose the happiness of a small number of people over what was better for the entire, all women, essentially, yeah. Which seems like it should be a pretty easy decision to protect all women, our sisters and mothers and daughters, over a small number of people who are in a very specific situation due to medical, biological changes that they sought out themselves. Donald Trump, as expected, has nominated Robert Kennedy Jr. to be his Secretary of Health and Human Services. Ron, the Unity Party, Robert Kennedy Jr., one of the so-called Avengers that Donald Trump has assembled. How do you feel about RFK Jr. getting in there and getting to shine a light on Big Pharma?
Well, speaking of old guys in shape, man, have you seen a picture of that dude with his shirt off?
Listen, man, I didn't have a body like RFK has at age 70 when I was 25, dude. He's ripped.
Close. Holy crap, Ricky. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. So if that's the guy that's gonna try to help with healthcare, I was like, we could find worse. I'm kind of excited about his push to get rid of kind of unnecessary chemicals that are in food, because you always hear stories about, you ever see there's a picture of like a ketchup bottle from the United States and a ketchup bottle from, say, England, and they're showing the ingredients on it. And in England, there's like 4 ingredients. And here there's like 17 ingredients. And, a lot of people think that like when you go over to Europe and you eat a ton of food, people are always like, why do I lose weight when I'm eating a ton of food and I'm in Europe? And a lot of people attribute it to all the unnecessary chemicals that are in food. So that would actually be awesome if we could get a hold of kind of that also, the chemicals in the food. But I know you're going to be super excited about one of the things that he wants to do, which is he doesn't want pharmaceutical ads to be on TV anymore, because I know how much those just drive you insane.
It drives me crazy, Ron. I always want to remind people it seems normal to us. Culture being what it is, right? You get used to whatever it is that the people do in your immediate surroundings or within your culture. And we get blind, particularly if you don't know what's going on in other countries. It's very easy to be blind to the fact that this isn't the only way to do it, that other societies handle things very differently. And I just want to remind people again, the United States and New Zealand are the only 2 countries in the world that allow prescription drug manufacturers to advertise to the public on television. It's just us and New Zealand. Think of all the fucked up countries out there that we should be absolutely fucking embarrassed that they have a more reasonable position on this than we do in this country. It should absolutely not happen. These are like drug peddlers coming up with trench coats on and opening their trench coat up and saying like, hey bro, like you want something for your restless leg syndrome or whatever. It's like one of my daughters said to me one time, everything is either a complex or a syndrome. Mm-hmm. And where did they all come from? Where did they all come from? Dude, it's like the military industrial complex. Yep. You've got to invent shit that people have wrong with them in order to create the medicine to treat these problems so that you can make the money. It's like the military industrial complex needs war. It has to have war because that's what makes it run. The pharmaceutical company, they need these chronic illnesses and conditions in order to make the drugs that are going to somehow make you better. But they don't ever really make people that much better, do they? It's corrupt as shit, and Kennedy is absolutely the man to go in there and tackle it. I don't know how much he can do, but I see him walking in there like Buford fucking Pusser with a big old wooden stick, and he's going to go in there and he's going to clean it out. So I don't know how he's going to do, but I wish him all of the success in the world, because something needs to be done here, because pharmaceuticals in this country, it is far, far out of control. And yes, Kennedy wants to go after obesity and issues like that, talking about just our chronic lack of good health practices in this country, period. So I'm psyched for that. Elizabeth Warren is already upset. She's already tweeting bad things about Kennedy and how she wants to ask him questions, which in my mind only reinforces that he's the man for the job here, as far as I'm concerned. Tim, what do we have? Go to the graphic that we have. All right, let's do it. We got some sound on tape here. Let's take a listen.
So we sued the HHS under the Freedom of Information Law. After a year of litigation, they sent us a letter which is posted on CHD's website that acknowledges that they are now not able to locate a single pre-licensing safety trial, placebo control for any of the vaccines that are now mandated for children. These are zero liability vaccines. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I think we need to be honest and we need to have good science. I spent 30 years trying to get mercury out of the fish in this country, and nobody ever called me anti-fish.
So they're coming after him saying that, like, well, he's going to try to take vaccines away. If he's taken at face value, he's saying, I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm pro-educating the public on what they're putting into their bodies. And I do think that it's worth looking at, because even just the way that the vaccines were handled around COVID, gives you a lot of pause to stop and say, okay, who profits from these things? Who gains from what is decided? What are the standards that are in place? And look, the question that I'm going to ask now, and I'm probably way too old to be waking up to this now, Ron, but we talked about Trump saying fake news. And whoa, holy shit, it turns out he wasn't just being a dickhead. There was a lot of truth in that idea of fake news. And so now I look at this and I think, Jesus, I used to assume that the FDA and that these government regulatory agencies had my best interest at heart. I believe that shit. Remember the food pyramid when we were kids? And you get 2 servings of this and 3 servings of that and whatever. And that was taught to us like it was gospel, like Moses brought it down from the mountain on a stone tablet.
Posters in our classroom.
Posters in our classroom. And we now know that wasn't by any means the best way for us to approach things nutritionally for children in this country. So I don't really trust anything that a government regulatory agency says to me anymore. I don't believe that I'm being protected. I don't just take it on faith anymore that if it has the FDA stamp of approval on it, that everything will be just fine and this won't harm me. I think we've got to ask these questions, and I think that RFK is the right guy to ask them.
I agree, Ricky.
Ronnie, Megan Rapinoe, Ronnie, I hate to go this far into the program without talking about a subject that you're passionate about. So I want to mention Megan Rapinoe. She says that she's been disassociating from reality since the election. Ronnie, this election has sent a lot of people on the left into a mental health, if not a tailspin, and some people it's sending them into a tailspin. Like all of these viral videos of people primal screaming and shit like that. It's like, look, I've been on the losing side of a lot of elections as a voter in my lifetime. I don't remember ever grappling with my existence in the face of defeat. And I don't know where it comes from, Ron, other than they really believe the cartoon caricature of Donald Trump that they've created. I mean, saying whether or not you think Donald Trump is going to be a good president, that's a fair question. Well, how do you think his policies are going to affect things? Do you think he'll be a good president? Do you think that he won't be able to offer solutions that make this country better? We can have that discussion around any candidate, Ron. But this idea that somehow Donald Trump is this singular figure who is going to somehow destroy people's lives in these ways that they can't even really articulate. They just know as an article of faith within themselves that somehow if you're a trans person or if you're gay or if you're in an interracial marriage, according to Whoopi Goldberg, if you're a woman, suddenly this country is not a friendly place for you to live anymore. But they don't really give you examples of how that's actually going to happen. So disassociating from reality seems like a big problem to have in the wake of an election result, Ron.
I mean, how weak of a person do you have to be to have your candidate not win and go into a tailspin and feel the need to go on social media and post ridiculous videos? I mean, do these people realize that those videos are forever? Like, they can delete them, but there's always somebody out there that downloads them, and they are forever. Like, these people, here's the deal there, Ricky. You said they're going to go into a tailspin, but they already started from a bad place because it's just years and years and years and years of being brainwashed. I don't know, but don't say her name anymore. Just like I said about the other one yesterday, just said some idiot said that they're disassociating from reality. Don't give her name any credence.
Well, The idiot that you're referring to from yesterday, I heard her say on a popular daytime program that some people on the left, particularly one particular gender, likes to watch. Ron, is this helpful at all? I saw Sonny Hostin, for anybody who's not reading between the lines with me, sorry, Ron, say, that this is different. That even when it was George W. Bush, there wasn't a worry that he was just an evil person or whatever. And I think, man, this is kind of revisionist history, because George W. Bush had some of the vilest, most terrible shit said about him when he was president. And it's like now she's wanting to like raise George W. Bush up to use as a counterexample of a conservative president that the left was worried about, but not like this. But I seem to remember there being a lot of hysteria about George W. Bush too, Ron.
Yeah, I know we have to talk about him, and I know people talk about him, but every time these people open their mouths, they prove me right that they're just weak, feeble-minded idiots. They just say things to, I don't even know. You disagreed with me on this yesterday, and that's fine. But I sometimes just think that these people are just actors, and that they do this because they've created this persona or a caricature of themselves, and now it's too late to go back to being normal. So they're like, this is who I am. This is how I get paid, and I'm just gonna keep being this character.
How do you walk it back? The more extreme you get, the longer and more difficult that road back to reality becomes for you to walk. Megan Rapinoe can't just get up one day and suddenly start saying normal shit. Her brand is to be so far on the fringe, whether she really believes it or not. I'm going to assume that she really believes what she says. I have no reason to think that she's faking it. But she also said that she's overwhelmed and anything crazy could happen any day. And here's my favorite, Ron. She says, "This is America. We were founded on slavery and inequality." Now look, first of all, the history of slavery in this country is shameful and terrible. And this country does have an original sin of slavery and inequality of people and people being treated as subhuman, and we absolutely should always remember that chapter of American history for what it was, so that we don't ever repeat any of those mistakes, and we're always trying to move forward to forming a more perfect union that has equality and opportunity for all people, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. Strongly believe that. But you got to understand, here's the thing about the left. There is an America hate that is at the root of a lot of this. And I saw it. You got to remember, I come from academia. 21 years I was a college professor. I went through the graduate sociology program where I was taught by a lot of professors in liberal arts in the discipline of sociology. And I saw how radical and far left my education began to get, particularly in graduate school. Okay, I had one professor who was an avowed Marxist. I had other professors who were doing other things that would clearly indicate to you, if you were in the classroom, there was no ambiguity in where they stood politically. There was nobody that was an outspoken conservative in the sociology department at my university. But here's the thing. There is a lot of stuff in American history that we can call out, and that it's not wrong to call out. In fact, that it's right to call out oftentimes when we find something historically where people have been mistreated, or we have fallen short of our country's stated goals and ambitions, which are equality, freedom, opportunity for everyone. We fail. We still fail sometimes as a society in that. But we got to reckon with the past. All of those things happened. Slavery, the Civil War, segregation, the Jim Crow South, all of it. It should be called out. It should absolutely be called out. But every country has sin and shame and human mistreatment somewhere in its history. You go back far enough, there's not a country anywhere where you are not going to find problems and mistreatment of people by other people. Those in power mistreating those who aren't in power. Whatever that's on the basis of. In some cases, it's race. In many other cases, it's just class. How much money do you have? Sometimes it's ethnicity. India had the caste system for years and years and years and years. You are not going to find a perfect country. You are not going to find a country that has a perfect, spotless background in history. That country does not exist. Does not exist. So every country in this world has its problems, has its negative background. And what has happened far too much, Ronnie, in my opinion here, is the left has just become the party of discontent. They're upset with everything, and that's where the identity politics figures into it, Ron. And what we should be doing is looking for solutions. And solutions require policy. They require policy. And where Kamala Harris and the Democrats lost this election was on policy. What are the solutions? What can we do? It's one thing to stand around and complain and complain and complain all the time, Ron, but what do you actually offer to make things better for the average American? I have something that I'm going to offer to make things better for the average American, Ronnie, and that's America's poll of the day.
Championship
God
day.
damn it. Over at Super 70 Sports on X, and this is a Friday, Ron, and my policy today to make America a little bit better is to let the public vote on the things that won Monday through Thursday. So here is your little walk back through this week. On Monday, the winner was your dad's Playboy stash. And you got to be probably over 40 years old for that comment to make any sense to you at all. Today, it would be your dad's browser history, I suppose. The second one is Frogger, and Dad should be deleting that if he's smart, because Mom might be on there
Incognito
doing the
mode.
family finances. Yeah, Dad, somebody tell Dad about incognito mode. Frogger is the second choice, the arcade classic. The third choice, Smokey and the Bandit, the 1977 Burt Reynolds classic that I talked about with Greg Garcia earlier this week. And last, having a catch. Just tossing that baseball around and having a little bit of fun. Ron was speaking yesterday about how he and his daughter have enjoyed that throughout her life. And I have many happy memories of having catches with my grandparents, my mom, my children. So let's see what the public has to say. I think all four of these things are good, Ron. How are you going to vote here before Tim lights the candle? And what's your prediction?
Oh, super easy. Having a catch. It's played such a massive role in mine and Tyler's relationship. And so that's easy for me. And I think that having a catch is going to be, I think it's going to be up there close to the top, if not the top.
All right, I'm going to go with having a catch as well, and I'm going to predict that Smokey and the Bandit wins. I think it's between those two, Ron. So we're going to find out how much people like to have a catch. Tim, thinking about it? Tempted by Frogger, no doubt.
Oh, Playboy.
Well, look at that.
Okay.
Look at that.
Well, I'm glad
Frogger
that we have a wholesome audience.
Frogger is getting, well, we're not that wholesome. The
Well,
Playboy
it's still
stash is right in there, Ron.
Yeah, but at least having a catch is winning.
It's winning by a little bit, but the perverts are still voting, Ron. We've got almost 5,000 votes in. I think this is close enough that we can't project a winner yet.
I'm going to project having a catch.
Playboy stash it's in the mix. I can't rule it out. But having a catch is ahead. Smokey and the Bandit running a very respectable third. I don't even know if we can count out the Bandit yet at this point. While we're on the subject of Super 70 sports, let's take a look at what I've been tweeting, shall we? It's what I do all the time, tweeting like a Guatemalan child in a factory somewhere. And here's one for you. Let's head into the weekend. Friday. What does Friday mean? It means that you ought to attack your weekend like Kenny Stabler driving a goddamn speedboat. Ron, that's my quarterback right there. Give me a quarterback that shows up shirtless in a speedboat, and I'll tell you right now, we're in the ball game. He's going to find a way to move the chains, Ronnie.
I mean, he is 100% your quarterback, isn't he? Like, I know you don't think he's the best quarterback ever, but he's your quarterback.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. We've come a long way. I used to tweet a picture of Tom Brady on a scooter wearing a helmet. And I don't know, man. Maybe one Super Bowl really is better if you're spending the rest of your time flying around the waters of Alabama.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.